Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Sky to Sea, the Crimson Sash series, Book 2 by Amanda Marin, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. The list Anne gives us is daunting. My hands shake as I flip through the packet, skimming its contents. Level of schooling, employment potential, physical and mental health. The pages go on and on. There are at least 24 categories here, each of which will be judged on and will factor into our immigration suitability score, a number that will be used to determine if Micah and I can stay here in Villa Marie in the New Republic, or if we'll be sent back to the nation to die. Does everyone who applies for citizenship get evaluated the same way? Micah asks. He leans over my shoulder, also scanning the list. I glance up at him, trying to read the expression on his face, wondering if he's as intimidated by it as I am. But he appears calm, as stoic as the sufferer he used to be. Anne nods. Although we welcome newcomers, we can't accept everyone, she tells us. This system helps us sort out those who are best suited to life in the Republic from those who aren't. Over the next few weeks, you'll be assessed based on those items. Applicants with the highest immigration suitability scores are awarded permanent residency status by the magistrate. I look around us. We're sitting at a table in the common room at the shelter. This is where they relocate everyone seeking citizenship from the refugee camps along the border. Like the shelter in Quebec Village before it, there's nothing especially inviting about this place. It's a modern building, box-like and functional, with white walls and plain furniture, none of which is very comfortable. But it's all we have. We've only been here a couple of weeks, and we barely know any of the other immigrants. Despite the languages and skin tones and histories that make us different, though, we share something important. We're all here because we want a better life. It's strange knowing that each of us, from the scarred woman reading in the corner to the curly-haired boy with a toy gyro train, will be reduced to a number instead of a name, and that some may not be allowed to stay at all. What happens to applicants with low scores? I ask. The words squeak from my throat like a kitten crying for milk. Anne shifts in her seat, uncomfortable, reluctant to answer. This must happen a lot to her, being an immigration case manager, her days filled with sad scenes and bad news. After their tourist visa expires, they're returned to their homelands. My breath hitches. When Micah and I escaped the nation, the enforcers hunting us on Deer Mountain said we'd be shot if we ever tried to come back. I didn't let the threat bother me much at the time. I was too relieved to be across the border. But now, finding out there's a possibility the Republic will reject us too, my heart thumps with fear. What about refugees like us? We're applying for political asylum, I remind her. Frowning, Anne avoids my stare. Even though she's young, a recent university graduate probably, I can see in her face that she's already exhausted by it all. Breaking the hearts of hopeful immigrants, turning away people eager to start their lives over, denying others the freedoms of the New Republic, freedoms they should have had in their own homeland if the world was fair. I'm sorry, but not everyone who applies is automatically granted asylum, she says quietly. Beneath the table, Micah takes my hand. We can't go back to the nation, though, he tells her. Despite his composed expression, I finally hear a tremor of worry in his voice. We'll be killed. Killed? Surprise registers in Anne's face. Behind her glasses, her brown eyes flicker down to the stack of papers crammed into a folder in front of her, the beginnings of our immigration application. This is only our first in-person meeting with her, and she's still trying to learn the details of everything we explained to the guards who helped us on the mountain. That's right. You're the sufferer in the Sev who broke the law of anonymity, she murmurs as she searches through the pages. She looks back up at us and her face is filled with sympathy. You fell in love and were labeled traitors. Yes, Micah says, sounding a little hoarse. That's us. He glances down at me and his gaze is heavy, flooded with equal parts affection and pain. It startles me to see the hurt there. I don't know what it means. If he's not happy, we're finally free to be together, or if something else is bothering him. Something more than the possibility of being returned to the nation, maybe. Something like the memories of his time at the work camp in Galloway, where he was sent as punishment for breaking his contract with the nation, or of being shot and watching Luke die during our escape. There's no regret in Anne's face, though. Instead, she seems encouraged. The magistrate will look favorably on a story like yours. We know the nation usually executes runaway traitors returned to them, and we take that into account. Besides, you've been persecuted for love. Several liberties cases are always treated with special care here. What about my age? I ask, spouting off the next of the worries stacking like bricks in my mind. I'm still 17 for a few more months. Will that count against me? Anne shakes her head. Not at all. We accept immigration applications for minors if their lives are in danger back home, which yours is. I want to feel relieved, but when she glances back down at our file, her lips purse and her face wrinkles with concern all over again. This said you both crossed on foot from Concord Province without documentation. Is that correct? She asks. I scoot closer to the edge of my chair. Is that a bad thing, coming here the way we did? It would have been better if you'd followed legal channels, but we understand that can't always be helped, especially for refugees. We had no choice. It was the only way we could get here. The nation would never have given us immigration papers, Micah explains. Anne raises a palm to quiet us. Let's not worry about that just yet. She tries to smile kindly to lessen our fear. It's my job to advocate for you, to help you stay, and if you work hard and show your commitment to being a good citizen of the Republic, none of this should be a problem. No problems. I like the sound of that. I ease back in my chair and loosen my grip on Micah's hand. This must be a mistake. This must be wrong. Just as I start to relax again, a panicked voice echoes across the common room. Anne, Micah, and I turn toward the entryway where a thin man with a dark, stringy beard stands. In one hand, he holds a letter, official-looking and ripped at the corner from being opened too quickly. With the other hand, he clutches at the sleeve of the older woman who distributes the mail delivered by courier drones. Hamza, please calm down, she tells him. The man only shoves the letter toward her, though, begging her to take the pages from him. No, you give this back. You tell them they make error. The woman double-checks the address on the envelope, just to be sure. Maybe he's right. She shakes her head, though. There's no mistake. It's for you. Clutching at his head, the man lets out a long, low sob. Such terrible, haunting sadness. No, I cannot go back. Desperate for someone to help her, the woman looks around, doe-eyed. She's just a messenger. She has nothing to do with the letter's contents. Noticing the scene, one of the shelter's social workers comes forward. Patiently, he leads Hamza away down the hall. As they go, the papers fall to the floor. Abandoned, unwanted by their owner, unable to be claimed by anyone else. For a moment I stare after the man, confused and worried, then my eyes drop to the letter on the ground. Even from this distance, I recognize the logo printed at the top of the pages. It's the same one on the file folder in front of Anne, an abstract globe cupped by a pair of hands. It's the seal of the Ministry of Immigration, Diversity, and Inclusion, MINIM, as Anne's told us it's called for short. What was that about? Micah asks softly. Hamza must have gotten his suitability score, Anne says, clearing her throat. It probably wasn't high enough for him to stay. That might be Micah and me soon. We might be told, despite weeks of hoping and trying to comply with whatever the new Republic asks of us, that we're not good enough, not welcome within these borders after all. Noticing our uneasiness, Anne is quick to clarify. Hamza's situation is complicated. He has a criminal history. We think he came here to avoid prosecution. Micah's face pales, as if reaching out to scratch a phantom limb. He brushes his left shoulder where his trader's sash was pinned. But I'm a criminal too. I would have been expelled if Nev hadn't found me first. Anne shakes her head. You're not a criminal like Hamza. He's a businessman accused of corruption in his homeland, and there's evidence that he might have killed a man there too. I bite my lip, hoping she's right, that the Republic isn't like the nation, that it will see a difference between love and murder. What will happen to Hamza now? Micah asks, his voice faint. I see the sadness in his face, the compassion, the concern, the refusal to give up on others even when their actions are unforgivable. If he could, he'd probably try to help Hamza somehow. Request the magistrate give him a second chance or offer him money for travel to another country. But it's impossible. We can't jeopardize our own chances of staying, and we need each penny for ourselves. He can appeal, Anne tells us. There may be something he can do to raise his suitability score, too. If he had relatives here or married a Republicite, he'd stand a better chance. We try not to split families apart. She sighs. Hamza's running out of time, though. His tourist visa expires soon, and if he fails to convince the courts he's innocent, he'll be deported. Deported. My bones frost over at the word. It makes me think of expulsion in Isla Price from the Center for Compassion, of Micah standing on the scaffold in Bristol, a red sash pinned to his arm, of him being strangled. And then I think of worse things, like the blood from his gunshot wound and his gray, sickly face on Deer Mountain, of the days he spent in the hospital afterwards, so weak, so close to death. I close my eyes, trying to force the image from my mind. No, we can't be deported. Returning to the nation isn't an option. I won't let Micah suffer like that again. Chapter 2. They have float screens in the New Republic. When I was leaving Bristol, Tally joked that they might not, but they do. Micah and I can't afford our own, of course, so we use public ones available at kiosks across Villa Marie, just like they are in the nation. These are a slightly different model, and they offer 2 language choices, English and French. But otherwise, they're similar enough. Except for one important thing. The news feeds. There's much more information available in the New Republic, news about the nation even. There are so many things I'd never seen before coming here. Pictures of the border wall, videos of national refugees crossing the Straits of Quebec in makeshift rafts, stories about citizens of the Republic who help smuggle nationals across the border. Les serfs, they're called. The deer. They're named for an animal like the coyotes who used to smuggle immigrants over the nation's southern border before the wall was built. I can't believe all of this, Micah murmurs later that morning as he stands at the kiosk beside mine outside the shelter. Back in the nation, being seen with him like this in public during the day would have been unimaginable, but not here. Even after weeks together in the Republic, every moment in the sun with him still feels like a luxury. There are so many more refugees than I ever imagined. I glance over at his screen. He's supposed to be contacting his parents, messaging to tell them we're alive and safe, reminding them that they can't believe whatever the nation put in the news feeds about us. By the looks of the data and details flickering across the display in front of him, though, it seems like he's gotten sidetracked. There are hundreds of them every year, Micah goes on. He looks up at me, brow creased and serious. And most die along the way. Look, 77% mortality rate. Most are shot by enforcers. The rest perish from the journey itself. Really? I lean closer to read the shocking statistic for myself. These kinds of stories aren't covered by journalists in the nation. Our leaders don't allow them to be published. Instead, they dismiss them as lies and exaggerations. That could have been us, I whisper, haunted. It very nearly was, too. We were shot at. We watched Luke die, and we spent a long, horrible night shivering in a cave, knowing each moment might be our last. All for our love of each other. No lies or exaggerations about it. We're lucky to be alive. It's something I feel every day, each time I look in Micah's eyes, but now I know it for a fact, too. And then a terrible truth occurs to me. Everything we've survived might have been for nothing. It might be undone in a single heartbeat by a number, our immigration suitability score. We might become like Hamza. Thinking about it makes me feel cold and hopeless all over again. Seeing the shadow of fear creeping across my face, Micah shuts off the float screen and turns toward me. When I lift my eyes to his face, there's a soft, sympathetic smile there. Special. Just for me. Maybe we were almost part of the 77% who died, but we weren't, he says. He speaks gently, in a soothing tone, his sufferer's voice. Think of the odds we overcame just getting here. The suitability score system is nothing to be afraid of by comparison. But I don't know French, I tell him, and I didn't finish my last semester at the National Academy. What if I ruin everything? He tries raising his left arm to reach out for me, but he stops halfway, grimacing with pain. His shoulder, where he was shot by enforcers during our escape, is still too weak. Micah only got the stitches out last week, and he's barely able to do the exercises the medics taught him to rebuild his strength, let alone more. Giving up, he brushes my cheek with his right hand instead.